A few months ago, my best friend Emily and I took a much-needed girls' trip to Miami. Sun, shopping, beaches, and of course, nightlife. We checked into a nice hotel near the beach, spent the first day exploring, and by night, we were ready to go out for drinks. The plan was simple: find a fun bar, have a few cocktails, and make some vacation memories. We ended up at a crowded bar in the heart of the city, the kind that was loud, dimly lit, and packed with tourists like us. It had neon signs, a DJ playing remixes, and the kind of energy that made it feel safe because of how busy it was. We found a small corner table, close enough to the crowd but far enough to talk without screaming over the music. We ordered 2 margaritas and just soaked in the atmosphere, excited to let loose. 2 guys, normal-looking, mid-30s, well-dressed, came over and started chatting us up. They were friendly, asked where we were from, how we liked Miami. Tourist talk. At first, it seemed harmless. One of them, the one talking to Emily, offered to buy us another round. Emily turned to me, giving me our silent girl code look. I nodded. It was just a drink. We watched as he flagged down the bartender, ordered 2 cocktails, and handed Emily's drink directly to her. Something about the way he did it made my stomach tighten. Emily took a sip and laughed at something he said. Everything seemed fine, until it wasn't. At first, I thought she was just tipsy. Her eyes got glassy and she kept blinking like she was trying to focus. Then her words started slurring. "Are you okay?" I asked, leaning in. She nodded, then tried to stand up and nearly collapsed. I barely caught her before she hit the ground. Her body felt limp, like she had just run a marathon and had no energy left. The guy immediately stood up too, placing his hands on Emily's shoulders. "She's had too much. Let me help you get her outside." I yanked her away from him so hard that she almost fell again. "We're leaving." He laughed, holding his hands up like I was overreacting. "Relax, I was just trying to help." But I saw the look in his eyes. This wasn't some concerned stranger. This was a trap. I threw some cash on the table and dragged Emily out of there. She was barely conscious, mumbling nonsense, her head lolling back. Outside, I tried to hold her up, but she was dead weight. My heart was slamming in my chest as I reached for my phone and called an Uber. I kept looking over my shoulder, afraid those guys were following us. When the car pulled up, I all but shoved her inside, triple-checking that I locked the door. The whole ride back to the hotel, I kept shaking her awake, making sure she was still responsive. When we got to the room, I laid her on the bed and forced her to drink water. She kept drifting in and out, barely aware of what was happening. I stayed up all night, watching her. By the next morning, she woke up groggy, her head pounding. But the night was a complete blank. She remembered nothing. I told her everything. Her face went pale as I explained what happened. The bar, the drink, the guy trying to get her outside. We reported it to the bar and the hotel security, but there was nothing they could do. No proof, no cameras, no way to identify them. The only thing that mattered was I caught it in time. If I hadn't noticed, if I had let that guy take her outside, I don't even want to think about it. Now, whenever we go out, we never accept drinks from strangers. And we always watch our glasses like our lives depend on it. Because sometimes they do. I should have trusted my gut when we arrived. Something about the place just felt off. My 2 best friends and I booked a last-minute Airbnb cabin in the mountains for a long weekend. It was supposed to be a cozy getaway. Hiking, grilling, just relaxing. The pictures online looked great. The reviews were fine, and the host seemed friendly in the messages. But when we got there, it was different. The cabin wasn't as nice as the pictures. The furniture was older. The place smelled damp. And the back door? It didn't have a lock. That's when we should have left. The first night was uneventful. We made dinner, played cards, and sat on the porch drinking beers. Around midnight, we locked up and went to bed. At 3:12 a.m., I woke up to a faint noise. A creak. At first, I thought it was one of my friends getting up to use the bathroom. But then I heard it again. Closer, like someone stepping inside the cabin. I held my breath and stared at the bedroom door, listening. The footsteps were slow, careful, like whoever it was didn't want to be heard. I grabbed my phone and texted our group chat. Me, are you guys up? No answer. Then, from under the door, I saw a shadow move past. I felt my chest tighten. I slowly, carefully, got out of bed and tiptoed to the closet. I left the door cracked just enough to see out. The footsteps stopped. Then, the bedroom doorknob twisted. I thought my heart was going to explode. I barely breathed as the door creaked open a few inches. Whoever was there stood in the doorway for a solid 10 seconds, just standing. Then they walked away. I didn't move until I heard the front door click shut. I ran out of the room and shook my friends awake. One of them had heard something, but the other had slept through it all. The first thing we did was check the cabin's security cameras. There weren't any, but then we checked the Airbnb listing. Under house rules, in tiny print, it said, "The host may drop by during your stay to ensure the property is being used appropriately." No warning, no heads up. We packed our stuff and left before sunrise. When we reported it to Airbnb, they contacted the host. His response? "I was just checking to make sure everything was okay." At 3 a.m. Without knocking. I still check every door twice before I go to sleep now. Vacations are supposed to be a break from reality. Mine turned into a nightmare. Last year, I traveled alone for the first time. I'd always wanted to visit Europe, so I saved up, booked a cheap hotel, and planned out all the places I wanted to see. The first few days were great. Sightseeing, amazing food, and meeting some cool people along the way. But by the third night, something happened that still makes me shudder when I think about it. I got back to my hotel around 10 p.m., exhausted from walking all day. As soon as I stepped into the hallway, I noticed something weird. There was a man standing at the far end of the hall. Just standing, not looking at his phone, not waiting by a door. Just standing there, perfectly still, facing my direction. I tried to ignore it and walk quickly to my room. The second my keycard beeped and I got inside, I locked the door. I exhaled, shaking off the creepy feeling, and got ready for bed. At around 2 a.m., I woke up suddenly. The room was completely silent, but something felt off. Then, a soft knock, right at my door. I grabbed my phone and checked the peephole. No one was there. I stood there for a moment, my pulse racing. Then, as I turned to walk away, knock, knock. I looked again. Still no one. Then, from the bottom of the door, a shadow moved. Someone was standing close enough that I could see their feet, but they were pressed against the door, completely silent. I backed away and grabbed my phone to call the front desk. Before they could even answer, the handle twisted. Whoever was outside was trying to get in. I yelled out, "I'm calling the police!" And suddenly, the shadow shifted away. By the time hotel security arrived, the hallway was empty. No signs of anyone. I barely slept that night. The next morning, I told the hotel staff what happened. They checked the security cameras. At 1:57 a.m., the camera caught a man walking down the hallway. It was the same man I had seen earlier. He had been standing outside my door for over an hour, just waiting. The hotel didn't recognize him. He wasn't a guest. No one knew how he got in. I checked out immediately and stayed somewhere else for the rest of my trip. I still double lock my doors in every hotel I stay at, and I never ignore weird feelings anymore. Last summer, my girlfriend and I booked a week-long trip to a beachside resort. It was one of those all-inclusive places, nice, big pools, private beach, fancy rooms. Everything was perfect, except for one weird thing. From the moment we arrived, I noticed this one guy in the lobby. Tall, thin, wearing a plain white t-shirt and jeans. He wasn't a guest, I was sure of that, because he never had luggage, never talked to the staff, never left. He just stood there, watching. At first, I thought maybe he was waiting for someone. But every time we walked through the lobby, morning, afternoon, night, he was there, just standing. By the third day, my girlfriend noticed too. "Why is that guy always here?" she whispered as we passed him on the way to dinner. I brushed it off, said maybe he was a staff member or something, but deep down, I knew something wasn't right. That night I woke up around 2 a.m. feeling weird. The room was dark, but I could hear something faint. A muffled voice. I sat up and turned toward the balcony door. The curtains were slightly open, and standing there just outside the glass was him, the man from the lobby. He was talking, but I couldn't hear what he was saying. His lips were moving, whispering something under his breath. Then he lifted his hand. He pressed his palm against the glass, fingers splayed like he was testing if he could push it open. I jumped out of bed, grabbed my phone, and flipped on the flashlight. By the time the light hit the window, he was gone. No footsteps, no noise, nothing. The next morning, we went straight to the front desk and demanded to know who he was. The woman at the counter looked confused. "We don't have anyone like that on staff." We checked out early that afternoon. When I got home, I searched online for any weird reports about the resort. A Reddit thread from 2 years ago. Someone else had stayed there and had the exact same experience. Same man, same lobby, same balcony, and no one had ever figured out who he was. Family vacations were supposed to be fun, not terrifying. A few years ago, my parents, my little sister, and I went on a cross-country road trip. We had done this before, stopping at random attractions, staying in cheap motels, and making memories. But this trip, this one felt different. It started when we were driving through a long stretch of desert highway. We hadn't seen another car for miles, just endless road and scattered gas stations. That's when my dad noticed something. That truck's been behind us for a while. I turned to look. Sure enough, there was an old white pickup truck a few cars back. It wasn't tailgating, but it was keeping pace with us. My mom brushed it off, probably just going the same way. But then, it followed us at every turn. When we stopped for gas, the truck pulled in too, but never at the pumps. When we pulled into a diner for dinner, it parked at the far end of the lot. Every time we got back on the road, it was there again. By the time we checked into a small roadside motel, my dad was officially on edge. Maybe it's nothing, but let's be careful. That night, we got 2 rooms. One for my parents, one for me and my sister. I couldn't sleep, my brain buzzing with paranoia. At 2:30 a.m., I woke up to a noise. I sat up in bed, straining my ears. Then I heard it again. Crunch, crunch. Someone was walking outside our window. My heart pounded as I slowly got up and peeked through the curtains. The white truck, parked at the far end of the lot. And standing right outside our motel room window. A man. His back was to me, facing the door. He was just standing there, waiting. I felt sick. I grabbed my phone and texted my dad in the next room. Me. Dad. Someone's outside our door. Seconds later, I heard our parents' door swing open. My dad stepped out, holding something in his hand. The man near our door? He bolted, jumped into the white truck, slammed the door, and sped off. The next morning, we told the motel manager. He checked the security cameras, but the plates on the truck were covered. We never found out who he was. But after that, my dad started carrying a weapon on road trips, and we never took that same route again.